one of the questions we get asked when we get called up to the Hill to testify either to the Senate or the Congressional Appropriations Committee is, and by a certain individual specifically, is what kind of traceability system have you built us for $150 million? It's a tough question, and we face that question every year. So I'm going to run through my slides, and we'll talk a little bit about where we're at, where we're going, and that sort of thing. One of the things I think that's going to push the traceability system, and we've tried to push the system based on animal disease. The economics of trade is going to be the factor for this, I think. It's going to move the system forward. It's not going to be about animal disease traceability unless we get the big one, which, God help us, we don't want to be building a traceability system in the middle of a huge animal disease outbreak. So with the advent of the possibility of sending beef to China, that's a huge market for us. Dr. Clifford has worked very hard, went to China many times to work on beef to China, been very stressed about it. It's a strenuous trip to go over there. The communication is difficult, and the negotiations are difficult. But he's been over there how many times, John? 4 or 5 times just to talk about beef to China. And we have trade groups that are going over there all the time, too, and talking to them, too. So we kind of know what they want, and we're getting there, and we're going to be facing an audit soon from them coming over to see what our system is. And really what they're asking for is and Neil's talked about this many times, is a bookend system. You've got to be able to trace back to where the animals were born from where they're slaughtered. And so that means we need to know where that tag was first applied and where they came from. And so we're continuing to negotiate with those folks, and we're not there yet, but we're working on it, and I think we'll see progress in that in the next year. So I've already talked a little bit about this meeting the traceability system. We've already got some systems that approach this birth to farm, from slaughter back to the birth farm. We have the APHIS National Uniform Ear Tagging System and the brucellosis vaccination system. AMS has several programs also that they're putting on, that they have online. The Never 3 and their hormone-free programs approach this system, and maybe systems that we can use as pilots for identification to meet the China rules and the economics of that. I think as we open these new trade systems in these new countries, as I said, economics will move these cattle because they'll be getting a premium for these animals that are in the program. And I think as we look at the economics of this, and we talked about this already in other meetings, is we believe that the economics will drive the system that we use. News tags is going to be something that won't be able to fit in the system completely. And we see that as going to RFID as a system that we may have to go to in the future to make these animals fit into the system so we can do that tracing and so that we can move at the speed of commerce. So we're going to direct our funding and our resources in our cooperative agreements in the future toward building and assisting the states toward this system. Neil's already talked about the data we've compiled, and we're using the system, the current system, to do a lot of our TB tracing, and it's working. We can find our way around with it. We're not there yet completely, but we're building it, and the states are doing a good job. These trace tests that we run are very important because when we report on our progress, every state that participates in traceability is measured, and they go into, as you know, the bell curve that says here's where we're at. So states that haven't done their tracing or haven't done their trace testing, they draw the curve down. We also, if they aren't accomplishing the goals that they set, that also puts the curve down, and we report on it. If they haven't done their testing in the future, they're not going to be funded. We're going to take that funding away. We're pretty serious about this, so it's the only real tool we have to get this done. And I have to go in monthly and report on the progress that we're making in traceability to my administrator, who takes this very seriously. It's a top 10 goal for APHIS. It's a top 10 goal for a lot of reasons, but when you stand in front of Congress and they say, and this is no fault, I don't think, of APHIS, it's the system and the politics that were in this whole traceability issue that what progress have you made with traceability for $150 million? So it's a very serious question. As Neil said, we're working on CVIs and the enforcement of this rule. That's going to become more strict. We just met last week with our animal identification coordinators and the VMOs and the ADs and the DDs that support this program in the field. And we sort of gave them their marching orders. Get back in the slaughter plants. Get into the buying stations and the markets and start working on enforcement and making sure that we're obtaining our goals from that direction. So you're going to see our folks out there a lot more. Our folks sort of got the opinion over the years that it was a state-run system and it was hands-off by our people. That's not the way we view it, and that's not the marching orders they've been given. It is a state program as far as how they want to maintain the system within their state and how they want to do their tracing intrastate. The rest of it is a federal program, and we want to make sure our folks know that we're very serious about the movement of animals and the fact that they meet interstate requirements. So they're going to be in those places, and they'll be enforcing those, and they'll be writing letters, and we'll eventually be leveling fines for folks that don't follow the and I know the states have been waiting for that support, and we're going to give that to you. Country of origin labeling, as you know, that's kind of in the tank. When Congress repealed the COOL rules, of course, Secretary Vilsack on December 18th of 2015 said we will no longer be enforcing COOL. So that's off the table. I'm going to move to the next presentation, and it's going to be very short. So our funding will likely remain the same. We will be distributing our funding and our guidance a little differently based on the cooperative agreements. We'll continue to work with industry, as you know, with this. We're going to be pushing out and collecting and having meetings to collect more information as we advance toward the next phase of what ADT will be. We're very interested in moving forward with the next phase because we've accomplished some of our goals in phase 1 or phase 2 or whatever phase we're in. But whatever phase we're in, we want to move forward. So you'll be starting to see Neil and myself and others reaching out to the industry and to you states for meetings to start to talk about where we go next. Okay? We're going to have a new administration in 9 months or 8 months. And so that's a whole new set of requirements. We may have to sit down. We don't know where we're going to be when the new administration, what their priorities will be, where they will push us, or whether it'll be status quo. We hope that we can, our job, that when our forefathers set up the senior executive service, the senior executives were put in place so that when these changes in government happened, that those senior executives were in place to educate and help the politicals as they came in to understand the programs that were in place so that there was a consistency that was held across all the different programs. That happens in some cases. In other cases, people come in with a strong political will and things get changed. So we'll see where that goes. But we hope our framework will continue and that we'll be able to march forward with the plans that we have. And that will be our job at the senior executive level to define that and explain that to the new administration. 6 years since we started the ADT framework, Dr. Clifford wanted me to say that it's been a privilege to serve as a deputy administrator and CVO, and we've been privileged to have him. We hope this program will continue because without a traceability system that's robust, we're not going to be able to compete in the world markets for trade. That's just plain and simple.